Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My last video did so well, I felt compelled to make this video. It's a follow-up video talking about Sunday's eidolons. Yeah, Sunday's V3 eidolons are really bad. Who's responsible for this? I just want to talk, okay? Just talk. I promise. So, in my previous video, I talked about Sunday's V3 kit, his energy requirements, and how well he works with Jingyuan. You can check it out by clicking the info card on the top right. You should really watch that video first, because I bring up a lot of my grievances with his eidolons in that video. Anyhow, multiple times during that video, I mentioned how his signature light cone is better than his E1 and why you should get it if you can. After reading through Sunday's kit a little bit more and doing some calculations, I came to the conclusion that his S1 is arguably better than his E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, and E6 combined. And I'm not joking, right? So consider this a PSA. From what I can tell from V3, none of his eidolons are actually worth getting over S1. In fact, E1 is just okay, E2 is underwhelming, E4 is just comically bad and weird, E6 is basically a scam. So yeah, let's get started. I'm going to start talking about his S1 yet once again to highlight how much I think it's a good pull. Sunday's signature light cone allows him to be SP positive, more so than Sparkle, which allows him for greater flexibility in team compositions. So I'll be referencing the sheet that I made of all the buffs that Sunday grants, and I updated it from my previous sheet to show stackable buffs in this sort of a gradient, as well as separated by eidolon and buff type so that it's easier to see. So yeah, these are it, and I'll reference if any of the things that I'm talking about is relevant to this sheet. So yeah, Sunday has incredible SP generation. From his S1, he's able to gain 1 SP back on turn 3 after he uses his ult. And then after he uses his ult, he gets his SP refunded every time he uses his skill on an ally that had the ult applied to. Which means by the time it's turn 6, he's gotten 1, 2, 3, 4 SP back. Yeah, his kit and his S1 combined is amazing. Now, it gives damage increase stackable, as you can see here. This is the S1 damage buff. It starts with 15, then it becomes 30 by the time it's turn 3 of the DPS, and by the time it's turn 4 of the DPS, the damage increase is now 45%. Like, I realize that this is a buff, but Sunday's kit gives so much damage increase that it creeps onto the category of diminishing returns at this point, in my personal opinion. But even then, the signature light cone resolves Sunday's energy issues completely, gives him so much SP that he's blowing Sparkle out of the water in her own niche, and also give damage increase. So yeah, this is such a great light cone. I would say one of the best in the game. And of course, I feel like his light cone should be part of his kit, but it isn't because Hoyoverse wants to make money. And the problem with that is that if you wanted money, why is his eidolons all bad, right? You should have made better eidolons and people will wail. So let's actually talk about his eidolons now. His E1 is by far the best eidolon. In the context of this conversation, I always take into account how many times you need to pull to get to that eidolon. I'm not ranking his E6 as something that's only worth 180 pulls. I am considering that you need to pull way more to get to that point as well, right? So anyways, with that in mind, his E1 is by far the best eidolon. It gives 20% defense shred to whoever the skill is targeted to, and an additional 40% defense shred to targeted allies summon. So in our sheet, it's this. It has 100% uptime, and it is applied by the time it's turn 2 of the DPS, when DPS is action advanced by Sunday. So it's good. And I think it's particularly good for Sunday since he gives so much damage increase. He needs some variety in the buffs that he's giving to avoid going into the diminishing returns category, and this definitely does mitigate that a lot. Honestly speaking, 20% res pen with 100% uptime would have been better in my opinion, and the reason why I bring in the res pen is because that was his V1, but it only lasted one turn. Anyways, overall, this is not a bad eidolon, and from this, we can kind of speculate that maybe in the future, summons and characters that use summons might have defense shred built into their kit, right? Because if you didn't know, defense shred gets more potent as you stack it until you reach 100%. Right? So we can also deduce what kind of characters we might be getting in the future based on his kit. Again, I think this is good, but I'm not sure if it's worth 180 pulls. And also, I am not sure if it's worth getting over his S1, right? This is just big damage goes brrr, right? Whereas his S1 is transformative. Now, it's all downhill from here. His E2 is very underwhelming and weird. Recovering 2 SP, as you can see here, recovering 2 SP the first time his ult is used, right? This is where the ult is happening. Turn 3 of the DPS. Yeah, it just gives 2 SP and then it gives 30% more damage increase to the targeted ally for the ult, right? Why? Look, Sunday's base kit grants the targeted ally 40% damage increase and whopping 80% damage increase if they have a summon. His S1, which you should get before getting any of his eidolons, grants additional 45% damage increase as well. Meaning, if you're using Sunday for his intended niche, his E2 merely grants 30% out of 155% damage increase. Unless you're supplementing your hypercarry with other types of buffs like res pen, attack, or debuffs, it really is not worth it in my personal opinion. Again, diminishing returns. Consequently, if we are to keep his E2 as similar as it is but make it better somehow, I suggest to change the damage increase to res pen, and the 2 SP for the first ult should be changed to 2 SP per ult. And if that's way too broken, it can be 2 SP every other ult, or 1 SP per ult. That's how I would change it to make it better, or at least worth E2. Again, E2, you need to get E1 before, right? So to justify it, it's going to have to be more potent than it is right now. Now, you think E2 was underwhelming? Get ready because we are now talking about Sunday's E4. It has puzzled me for a couple of days as I was preparing my script for this video why they would make this his E4 when it doesn't do anything for him. A viewer kindly reminded me today actually that when you have his E4 and his S5, it allows Sunday to ult every 2 turns. And I did the calculations and they are right. He can ult every 2 turns. So the mystery has been solved, but no, actually the mystery has not been solved. Why? Why? Why would you do this? Why would you lock the true potential of his E4 behind an S5? This does not make sense. Okay, please change this so that you actually can get this benefit without committing to an S5. That's crazy. If we were to change the energy gained for his E4 to 11, this allows Sunday with his signature Lycone S1 to ult every 2 turns. So yes, I think it should be changed to 11 energy. So please do that. They're making E4 useless unless you S5 his Lycone. That's so bad. Now that I understand what's happening, it's not puzzling. Actually, it is still puzzling, but it's more bad than puzzling. So yes, Hoyoverse, please fix this. This is not the way to go. I know you want money, but promise me that you won't do this. His E6 seems like something that should be an E1 or E2. It makes his talent stack 3 times. So here, it makes his talent stack 3 times, up to 60%. It now triggers when both skill and ult targets the ally. And it also increases the duration by 1. So that's a lot, right? That's a mouthful. So effectively, it means 60% crit rate by the time the hyper carry has their 4th turn. Additionally, when the crit rate exceeds 100%, every 1% of excess crit rate increases crit damage by 2%. So, okay, as a standalone eidolon, I think this is a great quality of life eidolon that makes building your character way easier. The problem lies in the fact that this is his E6. Let's look at other limited 5-star Harmony characters' E6. Sparkle, with the average critical damage build, gives about 100 critical damage to target ally. Her C6 applies her buff to everyone on the party, effectively tripling its potency and opening up team compositions from hyper carry to dual DPS. Robin's kit gives a balance buff to a hyper carry and or just general like dual DPS or triple DPS setups, and action advances 100% for every party member. If you have her E1, it gives unlimited res pen. Literally, it's just unlimited res pen. And her E6 makes her a meaningful damage dealer. For Ronmei, her E6 is very bad, so let's just not talk about that. These two, Robin and Sparkle, have E6s that meaningfully transform their role in the party. Sparkle as a hyper carry support to general whole party buffer, Robin as a buffer / sub DPS to buffer and the main DPS. Her damage output is pretty significant. And this is why I have a problem. It's boring, right? Instead of transforming his playstyle with his E6, they just threw up their hands and said 120 CV? Question mark? I am not saying it isn't great. Again, I just want to say it's not bad, but it's boring. And in the context of it being E6, underpowered. You might say, oh, 60 crit rate is not bad, blah, blah, blah. Sparkle's E6 allows her buff to be applied to everyone. It triples the potency. I don't think 60 crit rate is comparable to something like that. And so is Robin, right? Robin, like her kit is already broken, right? But her E6 makes her so powerful that you probably don't even need a DPS at that point. She can just literally clear everything herself, as long as her party members shill out hit and follow-ups. So here I actually did the calculations for Sunday's, how Sunday's E6 would affect the DPS. Where's hide? There we go. So here it is. So this shows my calculations for when the DPS has 80% crit and 160 crit damage. By the time it's turn 2, they have 0% critical damage and 100% crit rate. And by the time it's turn 3, 40% crit damage. And 80% crit damage by turn 4. And it continues. Whereas for a DPS with 6200, so that's 60 crit and 200 crit damage, you're building up their crit rate in turn 2 and turn 3, so you don't see any increase in critical damage. And you see 40% critical damage increase after starting on turn 4. So this is a comfort eidolon. It's a quality of life and comfort eidolon. It really is. It makes building your character way easier, right? Because I end up with a lot of crit ratios that look like this, 60 to 200, because I really don't want to use a crit rate body piece, because if I do, my crit damage tanks quite a lot. So yeah, this is a quality of life upgrade, not an E6 level of an upgrade. We need to break down, so I keep harping on the fact that this is E6. So let's break down the number of pulls you need to get to his E6. 180 pulls for Sunday himself, 180 pulls for his light cone, because you should be pulling on that first, 180 pulls for our E1, that is okay for now and may get better with new characters, 180 pulls for his E2 that gives you 2 SP and more damage increase to make your damage increase have diminishing returns, 180 pulls for E3, which is just a alt level increase, 180 pulls for E4, which is basically irrelevant. That doesn't change a single thing about his kit and rotation. 180 pulls for E5, again, which is an upgrade to your skill and talent. And then lastly, 180 pulls for E6 that gives you 120 CV. I'm not saying it's not powerful. I'm saying I want something better for an E6 than damage, big numbers, quality of life goes right. I'm just very underwhelmed. Whenever I say I'm unhappy with his eidolons, right? A lot of people will come to me screaming about the fact that his kit is already busted, right? I agree. Sunday's baseline kit is good. I agree. I don't want them to make any changes to his base kit. I think it's plenty good. I think his eidolons are really bad. And every single time we have this conversation about how this is power creep, blah, 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 people only like to say that when it's a male character, right? They shh about it if it's a waifu. I'm just really over this notion that, people only care about power creep when it's a man. It's actually sad. You just don't want to see Sunday winning. You just don't want to see a husbando winning. Okay, you are sad. No one complains about Robin. She literally broke the game. She made zero cycling so easy. She did. And then no one complains about her. Robin literally broke the game with her 100% action advance for all allies. And if you get her E1, unlimited res pen, right? She literally broke the game with her kit and her eidolon. And when we ask Sunday to have any eidolons that are worth pulling for, we just want power creep, right? We are just selfish. I am done with this crap. Anyways, if I were to make changes to his eidolon, his E2 will become his E6. I will also change it so that every ult recovers 2 SP, and it grants 50% res pen instead of a damage increase. His E6 will be his new E2. It works the same mechanically, but I would say it should only grant about 80 CV instead, because it is not his E6 anymore. I think it needs to be undertuned a little bit. For his E4, I will change the energy gain to 11, as I talked about previously, so that it works with S1 Sunday. Right now, this is even more worthless for majority of the players. And it'll be worthless even if you get his E6, because it's locked behind his S5. So yes, this definitely needs to be changed. And I think this works better because if you have better rotations on his E4, it means that the res pen on his E6 and the 2 SP recovery will be more frequent. So it makes sense that it's set up this way. Right now, I'm working within the bounds of V3 for the above changes. But if I'm being honest, I really, really want him to have summons of his own. If I had the mighty powers to actually change his kit, I would make him a summoner as well in his E6. This hypothetical E6 would be something like Sunday now has 4 minions / summons. I don't know what they're called. I think in the boss battle with Sunday there's 4 minions, right? So that's why I decided on number 4. If I'm remembering wrong, please let me know. Anyways, they have a base speed of 60, and every time Sunday uses his skill on an ally with a summon, all of his minions action advance 100%. They do AoE imaginary damage, scaling off of Sunday's attack, crit rate, and crit damage. His talent, crit rate 20%, now also applies to himself as well. So it incentivizes people to build attack on him now, as well as speed and crit damage, since crit rate will be covered by his own talent, right? So he can be a damage dealer as well. So yeah, that's what I would do, because it's just so boring. His E6 is so boring. They just missed out on an opportunity of Sunday having his own summons. I feel that a character whose niche is a support for summons should have summons themselves. So this is what I came up with. Anyway, I'm excited for his V4 changes and V5. Okay, this is the first time I've ever looked at leaks to this degree, so I don't know how many versions that we're gonna have, but in the future I hope they really correct his eidolons, because they are incredibly underwhelming and not worth all the pulls. The only thing that's worth pulling is S1 and maybe E1. Anyways, Thank you for watching. Have a lovely day. My account review is coming, I promise. I just keep saying that I'm gonna do it, but oh my god, I've been so busy with life, even though I'm not that busy. What am I saying? Thank you for watching. If you like the video, comment. I love reading you guys' comments. So please let me know what you think. And yeah, I'll see you later. Bye.